Chapter 8, Wolf Bite. Well, that sounds kind of ominous. Monday. We made it through October. I was grateful that Monday was a school holiday because I didn't really sleep at all that night. I was grateful I remembered it was a school holiday too. I spent most of the night making a list of what I could remember and what I couldn't. I had managed to put together a rough timeline of things that had happened since we moved back to Pine Hollow. Every now and then a new memory would surface as I tried to work out what had been going on in my life the last few weeks. It seemed like the worst holes in my memories were from recent months, and in particular since the move. I had also spent a good portion of the night texting Allie as we tried to work out what had happened between my getting separated from Elliot and Danny and my waking up in the backyard. The boys apparently went back out to the woods to see if they could make some sense of my muddled trail. They hadn't had much luck. And I still couldn't remember any of it. Everyone wanted to meet up at the club room later in the day to talk about it. Apparently it was accessible even when the school was closed. But I had something else I wanted to do that morning. Something I needed to do alone. I needed answers, but the others were just as clueless about what happened as I was, so I was going to have to look for them somewhere else. You better not be looking for that fairy hill. Or going back to the place where it all took place by yourself, girl. I swear I will slap you with a fish.
Are you sure you're feeling okay?
I'm fine, just a little tired. Stayed up too late drawing.
You know what I've told you about that.
I know. Mom tipped her head back and looked at me critically.
Your hair has gotten really long, hasn't it?
You have no idea. I still couldn't really explain the sudden growth to my waist, so I tried putting it up to disguise it a bit. I'd have to try to keep it hidden until I could get it cut. Mom watched me pull on my brown jacket, which I finally had remembered buying a few months ago.
Are you going somewhere this morning?
Yeah, I have somewhere I want to go. Then Allie wants to meet up later, if that's okay.
No homework to catch up on?
Nothing that's imminently due. Probably.
Try not to stay out all day, okay?
Sure. I'll be back by mid-afternoon, I think. I gave her a quick hug and stepped outside. I was hoping I could leave without Danny or Elliot seeing me. Thankfully, Spencer was at the shop with Dad, still working off being grounded. I was kind of sorry when I remembered that particular incident. It would have been better forgotten, I think. But anyway, it meant I could take the car. The shopping district at the town square wasn't far, but I honestly didn't trust myself to not get lost. Shopping district. Getting lost in a car wasn't as bad as getting lost while walking. I remembered enough of our date now to recall Danny telling me that Corvin's siblings were known as an information source, and a sort of think tank of problem solvers for the paranormal. Okay. Thank goodness, at least you're doing that instead of all the other crazy plans I have concocted in my brain. If anyone might be able to help me figure out what was going on with, well, me, it would be them. Probably. Maybe. I hoped. Slowly talking myself out of this. I didn't know how to access the paranormal part of the shop from anywhere other than the courtyard, so I hoped that if I went in the main entrance, it would take me to the right place. I parked in the first available spot I found and hurried down the sidewalk to the cafe. I nearly went in the front entrance when I spotted a little side door tucked away in a narrow alley between the cafe and another building. Oh, this is new. I could feel the faint thrum of something. Magic, maybe? And I abandoned the front door, heading in through the side instead. The moment I stepped in, I knew I was in the right place. For one thing, I had seen a few customers through the front windows, but when I got inside, it was empty. And just the feeling. Something about the atmosphere made it obvious.
Nora?
Hi, Corvin. I looked to my left and saw Corvin, standing as if he'd just come out of the kitchen. He hurried over to me, a worried look on his face.
What are you doing here?
I came because I heard this is a place I could maybe find some answers. Corvin glanced back to the kitchen, a worried look still on his face.
It's not that you can't, but...
He trailed off and looked at me curiously, as if noticing something for the first time.
Your hair's longer.
Yeah.
And that's not all. Something is different.
That's part of why I'm here.
But...
Welcome to the murder! I turned and spotted a vaguely familiar face walking toward us with a smile on his face. How could you forget Merle? I knew he was Corvin's brother, but I couldn't quite remember his name. Something. It looks like you're back. Yeah, I know I was here recently, but... He tipped his head back, studying me quietly. That isn't quite what I meant. Oh? Melvin? No. He smiled slightly. What can I get for you today?
I think she...
Corvin, please go to the kitchen. Aya was looking for you. He always wants to send Corvin away. Corvin's shoulders drooped, and he mumbled a response I didn't hear properly as he slinked to the kitchen, casting a worried glance over his shoulder as he went. Bye, BB. Why is he so worried? So what was it you were looking for today? Well, I was actually kind of hoping for answers. He nodded as if that answer had been what he was expecting. Well, do what we can. Come this way. He started walking me to a table across the room, pulling off the short apron he wore as he walked. I stared at the back of his head, racking my brain to figure out his name. Merlin? Closer? Merle! I think. Merle? He stopped and looked at me expectantly as he waved me to one of the chairs. Yes? I let out a long sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness. He gave me a questioning look. Sorry, well, it's part of why I'm here. I'm kind of having trouble remembering things. Like, a lot of trouble. A disturbing amount of trouble. Basically, it's like some parts of my brain have potentially melted, resulting in partial amnesia. Merle just nodded as he sat across from me. I got the feeling he was totally unsurprised by that claim. Then let's get down to business. When did you first notice you were having trouble with your memories? He looked up and waved his hand as if he was waving someone over to the table. To my surprise, a very large black raven fluttered down from the rafters and landed in front of me. It peered up at me curiously, cocking its head to the side. A familiar? I eyed it warily before looking back at Merle and taking a deep breath. First things first. Before that, why was Corvin so worried? I want answers, but I also don't want to make a mistake here. Corey? He always worries. Why? Listen, we can definitely find answers to your problem, whatever problem you have. It's just that the answers we find aren't always pleasant. Sometimes people regret asking. Then that's on them, isn't it? It is. We are, after all, neutral. We only do what people ask us to do. It's what they pay us for. Which is probably his other concern. Our information isn't free, and sometimes people don't wish to pay our price. I'll pay whatever you need me to. Well, short of giving up my soul or something. That's probably a bit, I hesitated. You're not going to ask for my soul, are you? He just laughed. Good. I'm not going to stumble around without knowing what's going on anymore. I don't mind pain. I just hope you have a payment plan because I don't have much money. Right. I guess the memory thing has really been going on for a while. I've had several incidents in the past. I'm familiar with those incidents, I believe. How? I mean, I assume Corvin. I was a little taken aback by that, but it was also weirdly reassuring.
What is it?
Oh, I was just thinking that... I guess it makes sense you'd know about that. I mean, at any rate, it does kind of give one confidence in the whole finding answers thing. Not that it's not a little creepy that you know about my past without me having said anything. You're not reading my mind, are you? He just laughed.
We're pretty familiar with most of the strange occurrences in Pine Hollow. And Corey had mentioned it when you first moved back to town. That's how I knew it was you.
Ah, makes sense. Though, to be fair, my disappearances weren't that strange. Not compared to some of the other stories about Pine Hollow.
Pretty strange, considering that it was 3 disappearances within the same family in a short period of time.
It was only twice. I only wandered off twice. He raised an eyebrow curiously.
I was also referring to your brother's disappearance a few years prior to your first.
Spencer never... I hissed as pain exploded through my head. Merle was up and next to me in seconds.
Sorry. I suspected that would break the seal on those memories. I know it hurts. Just bear with it.
Sepia tone memory time. A flood of images were pouring into my head. Too much. It was too much to deal with at once. Oh my god! How could I forget that? Spencer had disappeared. He vanished for days. People were looking for him. We were all scared. We had no idea where he went. I kept hearing voices, singing. They wouldn't let me go looking. I ran out into the woods when Grandma was busy. I ran to the fairy hill. They had him. They had him and they wouldn't let him go. I made a deal with them. I said I'd take his place. They let me go home to say goodbye. And then they said they'd come for me. But they never did.
That's where you're wrong.
A blonde woman, clearly a waitress of some kind, set a glass of water in front of me. Who are you?
This is Kaya. She works here too. You could call her our resident fairy expert.
Kaya rolled her eyes his way, scowling.
You could call me that, though I wouldn't recommend it terribly.
Merle chuckled softly, unfazed by the glare.
But I do have some experience with fairies, and changelings more specifically.
Changelings? I knew what that was. Whoa. Okay, I need a minute to think about this. I made a deal with the fairies in that hill to take Spencer's place. I remember that now. And they sealed my memories of it?
It seems that way, but the seal had started to erode a bit.
That's right. I remember, Velos. Velos said something about that. I'd seen a photo of that mound and it caused me to black out. He said it was due to sealed memories.
The seal had weakened considerably, so when I mentioned your brother's disappearance, it was enough to completely break it down.
What do you mean that the fairies came for me? I trailed off. I did remember something about that, but it was all fuzzy and weird. They clearly didn't take me away. I mean, I've been here the whole time.
Yes. And no. Part of you was here, and part of you was there, in fairy.
Okay. That doesn't make any sense.
Soul transfer, right?
That's the usual technique.
Soul transfer?
It's the technique fairies prefer for changelings these days.
What does that mean? Soul transfer? I mean, I get the concept, but transferring my soul where?
into the body of a fairy.
I thought I was a fairy.
Not quite. You said you made a deal with them, right?
Man, I am so lost. You're going to have to start at the beginning with this. I didn't know what I had been expecting, but that wasn't it for sure. I felt like I'd suddenly stepped into a really bad science fiction movie and I just found out I was a pod person.
The short version is that fairies have been taking human children to their realm for centuries, and replacing them with fairy changelings. In the past, humans had a tendency to catch on to it. After all, fairies are pretty rubbish at actually behaving like humans. So fairies came up with sneakier ways to get what they wanted, and ultimately the strategy they hit upon was soul transfer. Take the child's body to fairy for safekeeping, and transfer the soul into a fairy body to serve as camouflage for the changeling. When the child reaches maturity, return their soul to the original body in fairy. And there you go. The fairies get their human, and no one has to die.
But why? Why is it so important to capture humans? What's that even about?
Preservation of the species, most likely. That's the common theory. Fairy life force is pretty fragile. They've got impressive magic, but their life energy is just so frail. Every passing generation is weaker than the last.
Without the injection of new blood and of a stronger life energy, they die out.
If you tell me they were planning to breed me, I am going to go dig up that fairy hill and start strangling people.
Well, we can avoid telling you if you like, but...
Seriously? Breeding stock?
Why so shocked by that? What else would they want you for?
How should I know? Okay, setting that aside for the moment, even though I was not happy about that revelation at all. So, you're telling me that when I was around 7, my body was kidnapped by fairies, and my soul was just shoved in a spare fairy, where it's been all this time. And now I'm some weird fairy human thing.
Were. I mean, you're back in your original body from what I can tell. Your aura is... well, it's not quite fairy.
Not entirely human either, though.
Wait, what? I swapped back! When?
I assume that's why you were here.
Last night! Something happened last night!
But what is the question, I'm wondering? How on earth did you manage to break that contract on your own? Even I never figured that out. There are methods, but the ones that work aren't exactly safe.
I don't know. My memories are still kind of fuzzy.
I'm not surprised. To be honest, your soul is a little frayed around the edges. Like it was forcibly ripped from somewhere, probably that other body, before it was returned.
My soul is frayed? Is that, bad?
Souls are pretty resilient. It'll heal up. But that's why your memories are a bit messed up.
How do you know?
I can see souls. And magic auras, actually. Most of us in this shop can. My magic is life-oriented. I can see living souls, and I can also assess the physical well-being of someone's body, like identifying sickness or problems with them. That's why I knew when I met you that your soul and body just didn't match. Though I didn't realize at that point you were a changeling.
Why didn't you say anything?
Well, that's not really something you just say to someone, is it?
I guess not.
We're born in the bodies we're meant to be in, for better or worse. For me, seeing you in that fairy's body was like seeing a child wearing their father's coat. It just didn't fit you.
But what about the fairy that body belonged to?
She would have been there too, sleeping in a corner of your mind during the day.
You were probably fairly convincingly fey to people just sensitive to magic or auras. Because of my magic, I can see a bit further than that, so I could tell the difference.
I looked at him through my fingers, thinking about that. That voice I had heard in my dreams or when I was sleepwalking. Wait. The sleepwalking. How did that fit into this? I shook my head. We were trying to fit too many pieces of the puzzle together all at once.
What exactly do you remember about last night?
Well, I went out with Danny and Elliot, for Samhain. I was supposed to be back by sundown. One minute I was out in the woods with them, and the next... I shook my head. I don't know. I was in my backyard, shoeless. My memories were all jumbled. Most of what's missing seems to be from the last few months. A lot has come back to me, but last night's a total blank. And my hair is longer. Look! I reached up to pull it from the messy bun, letting it fall down my back. You remember from when I was in here the other day, right? It was a lot shorter. But when I woke up in my backyard, it was like this.
Well, your body was off in fairy for the last, 10 years? I'm sure they didn't bother with regular hairstyling.
I have to admit, you're taking all this better than I thought you would.
I don't know if this option really matters. I kind of want to pick the top one just because that's what Danny said to us when he was dealing with being a werewolf. It's like, oh, I went to pieces so many times, so that's a nice parallel. Oh, don't worry. I'll go to pieces later. I just prefer to be alone when I dissolve into hysterics. He smiled slightly and took one of my hands. Stop making plays, Merle.
If that's the case, want a piece of totally neutral advice? Don't try to deal with it alone. I know you have people you can rely on.
If that's the case, then make use of those bonds when you can. It's pointless to face this sort of thing alone when you don't have to.
I know I have people I can rely on.
Danny, perhaps? It's obvious how much he cares about you.
Merle, setting them up. I flushed and looked away. I know that. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. So, now what?
Well, you're already over the biggest hurdle. You broke your contract. Somehow.
So that means things will go back to normal? No more sleepwalking and things?
Sleepwalking?
Yeah. I remember that too. I'd been sort of going outside at night while asleep. We were having to use some kind of weird potion to keep me in my room at night.
I doubt that was sleepwalking. Sounds more like it may have been the fairy taking control and trying to make her way back to fairy, with your soul in tow.
That actually makes sense. I did kind of have the feeling it wasn't normal sleepwalking.
If that's the case, it shouldn't be an issue anymore. As for back to normal, that's a matter of debate.
How so?
You spent a decade in fairy. 10 years being bombarded by fairy magic. Humans that stay in fairy for any significant length of time change. You become more like them bit by bit. It's one reason they so quickly latched onto the idea of leaving human souls here in our world until the body reached maturity. Human souls taken to fairy at a young age diminished in vitality over the years. By the time they were adults, they were barely better than the average fairy. But leaving your soul here sheltered it. Even inside a fairy body, the fact that it was on this side meant the shift wasn't as extreme.
But for my body, which was in fairy all this time, are you saying I'm not human anymore? That is what you're saying, right?
We're the closest thing you'll find to a proper hybrid, I suppose. Not fully fairy by a long shot, but definitely not human anymore either.
I wasn't sure how I felt about that, really. I mean, I thought I was Fae all this time anyway, so it kind of felt like not much had even changed. Will my memories come back? I mean, I can remember most things. My childhood here, moving away, moving back, my friends. But I still have these huge gaping holes. There are things that are just gone.
Actually, if it's about memories, I'm the one you want to ask.
I was startled at the intrusion into our meeting. Heyo. Corvin was approaching the table cautiously. Hey bro, can I help with this? Please?
I told you to go into the kitchen. You know better than to eavesdrop on a client.
I just hope I hope we always come to Merle for help in every route, and Corvin's just hiding behind the counter eavesdropping until he's like, can I help?
I know, but this is someone I know. I couldn't just stay quiet.
He's right, though. If it's about your memories, Corvin is going to be more help than I will. My specialty is life. His is dream and memory.
I wasn't hugely thrilled with Corvin showing up like that. He was in the club with everyone else, and he looked like he had a big mouth. He just has luscious lips. Don't mind him. But I guess if he could help me, I shouldn't complain. In that case, I hope they're not going to make me pay them separately. Corvin let out a sharp whistle, and I heard the flutter of bird wings. A solid white crow flapped its way down to his shoulder, peering at me with strange blue eyes. I just stared back in awe, temporarily forgetting my own problems. I'd never seen an albino crow before. He was beautiful. Corvin smiled as he sat next to me.
This is Finn.
He's so pretty.
If you praise him, he'll definitely get a big head.
The bird let out what sounded like an annoyed cackle and nipped at Corvin's ear.
Oh, hey!
I laughed as I watched what looked like two friends bickering, except that one was a bird. I smiled slightly. Corvin took his glasses off and folded them carefully before he set them on the table. He peered at me for a really long time before he spoke again.
From what Finn and I can see, your soul has a few holes in it. It's not uncommon. People forget things all the time. And when that memory is permanently lost, a little piece of the soul goes with it. It leaves cracks, gaps, or even holes sometimes.
Merle mentioned it was a bit frayed on the edges.
That's right. And some of the holes are more extreme. But it's not that bad. I mean, I've seen worse. It'll repair itself over time.
I rubbed my head and sighed.
Are you alright?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I think I just need time to process everything. Maybe look deeper into changelings. I hadn't researched much in that direction because what I'd read didn't seem to fit my situation. I guess I was too naive.
Probably a good idea.
I smiled tiredly. But I think you've at least given me some direction. At the very least, I have some basic answers that I can use as a springboard for figuring the rest of it out. Merle smiled gently.
I'm glad. And you can always come back if you need help. We're pretty good at finding answers even if we can't figure it out right away. We can look into finding out what happened last night as well.
I don't want to run my bill up too much. As it is, I am not sure if I should assume you meant money or something else.
Sometimes we take money, but today, no.
Ah, okay. Do I have to pay you 3 separately, or?
No. When you hire one of us, you get the whole group. But whoever you talk with first gets to set the price. In any case, I'd never charge a cute girl for help.
This is true. Without warning, he reached over and smacked the back of Corbin's head. Behave yourself, she's with someone else now, swat.
Oh!
So, what sort of payment are we talking here?
I want one of your paintings.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, that was unexpected. How did you know I paint? He shrugged and grinned. Of course. Corbin, at the very least, looked relieved. I guess I should be too. It was better than paying money, or signing away my firstborn or something. But still, that was kind of weird. Okay, so you want me to paint you something?
No. I want a painting you've already completed. Something painted prior to yesterday.
Why? He just smiled. You're not going to tell me, are you?
Artists always put a little of their soul in their work. I just think it would be interesting to have a painting from when you were still sharing a body with that fairy.
Ah. Wizards are weird. Preach. Merle stood and the other two followed suit.
Is there anything else?
Well, I was kind of hoping I could get a cup of coffee.
I think I can manage that. Americano?
That sounds perfect.
We'll be right back.
He and Corvin left, heading for the kitchen. Right as the door shut, I saw Merle grab Corvin by the ear and say something about eavesdropping. I could hear Corvin's yelps all the way from where I was sitting. Kaya, however, lingered near my table. After what seemed like a brief hesitation, she sat down again and pulled her chair closer.
I was with the Fae for a long time. A long time. And they never once even hinted how to break a changeling contract. With one like yours, one where you made a deal, I can't even imagine how it would be possible without some sort of magic. If you ever remember, will you tell me?
Absolutely. No problem, girl. Never mind that. Of course I will, definitely. Kaya smiled slightly.
For free?
I blinked in surprise. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even know what to ask for in return. She smiled and stood.
Well, I guess there's still a fair bit of human in there then.
That's interesting. That's true, fairies don't do anything for free. They're always like, let's make a deal.
Fairies love their secrets, and they never give anything away for free.
I made a face. They may have held me hostage for a few years, but that doesn't make me one of them.
Let me know if you remember anything.
I will. She returned to the front of the shop, and I found myself really wondering what her story was. I had a feeling she wouldn't tell me, even if I asked. Fairies. I sighed as I thought about everything they told me. How should I react to all this information? It was sort of like finding out my entire life was a lie. Except that it wasn't. It was still my life. It was just that part of me was the lie, but not anymore. What did that mean for my life until this point? I didn't even know. I felt like I needed to sit down and start making pie charts and line graphs to figure it all out. Now who? I want to say... Rachel? Maybe? You were Nora, correct? Yep. I yelped loudly at the unexpected voice and nearly did a panicked and very not graceful backflip out of my chair while frantically flailing fake karate moves at whoever it was that just interrupted my existential crisis. I somehow, miraculously, ended up only jumping to my feet with minimal flailing. I stared at the woman in front of me, wondering why her face was familiar. Studying her with narrowed eyes, I tried to work out where I knew her from. She was staring back at me with those odd gray eyes. Oh, right. Danny and I had run into her on our way home from our date. What was her name again? Renee? Rachel? That man was with her, too. The angry one that had fought with Danny. May we join you? I really didn't want them to. I had a feeling they weren't here for a friendly chat. I wasn't sure what to do. What is your game? Well, Danny always has an open mind and is willing to discuss stuff. So what do you want? I made absolutely no pretenses. I knew they weren't here for pleasant conversation. Not after our last interaction. I didn't remember all of it, but I remembered I didn't really like it. And frankly, they were kind of showing up at an inconvenient time. I didn't have the emotional fortitude to be polite at the moment. What do you want? Rachel lifted an eyebrow at the question, but just calmly sat opposite where I was standing. Not that I'd invited her to sit. Clearly, that didn't especially matter to her, especially. I stood tensely behind my chair, making no move to sit as well. I'm actually a bit busy at the moment, having an important meeting. There's no one else here. Everyone left several minutes ago. It appears your meeting is over. Ugh, were they watching? They're going to be back. I won't be long. I apologize for disturbing your meeting, but I wish to speak with you. About Danny, I assume? There isn't much else I'd be interested in speaking with you about, is there? I crossed my arms in front of my chest, mostly to hide that my hands were shaking, and gazed down at her. I guess not. I heard that you had an altercation with those two strays last night. Strays? Altercation? Did she mean Sean and Derek? They were the only other werewolves I knew, but didn't think I had met up with them last night. Danny hadn't mentioned that. I hope they didn't harm you in any way. I'm fine, as you can see. That wasn't untrue, despite that I really didn't know what she was talking about. I'm pleased. They've caused enough of a disturbance in our community without dragging the Fae into our affairs as well. I wasn't sure what to do. I could ask her what she was talking about, but letting on that my memories were a bit scrambled didn't seem like a good idea. Not with these two. It would probably be best to just play along. There's no need to worry. Anything they do is their own choice. It has nothing to do with you. I'm sure it seems that way to you, but the situation is not that simple. When one of us makes an enemy outside the community, it affects us all. At any rate, we don't condone them making a direct move against you. Those two have been trying to isolate Daniel for some time now. I suppose your friendship with him got in their way. You're not that different from them. You've been bugging him to join your group as well, from what I understand. We did not attack an injured girl in the woods, and our bugging him is for his protection and benefit, unlike those two who simply wish to use him for their own gain. Injured? But I don't have any injuries on me. I didn't last night either. But then there was also the whole body swap thing that had happened. What on earth? Because you already somewhat know the situation, I will be upfront with you. Daniel, Sean, and Derek are in danger, as are all unconnected werewolves in this area. Then why don't you let the ones who want to join your clan in and leave the others alone? We don't want the others, particularly the ex-hunter. Ex-hunter? That rings a bell for some reason. But we would be willing to extend an olive branch if Daniel were to speak for them. I don't see what this has to do with me. Danny made it pretty clear he doesn't want to join you guys.
It doesn't have anything to do with you. But you are Daniel's friend. It was my hope that you could speak with him on my behalf, since he is unwilling to speak with me directly.
You want him to join you for his protection? This was all familiar, but pieces were missing. It was maddening to only be able to grasp bits and pieces of what she was saying.
Loners are often targeted by others, by clans who don't wish to share territory, by hunters. We don't live easy lives, and your human organizations only care about human problems. So we protect our own, and Daniel is one of us.
I don't get why you're so focused on him when there are other loners in the area as well.
Normally, I would say that's none of your business. But in the spirit of being open, I'll explain. Our clans are large, and they often clash with others. For the sake of maintaining peace in our communities, we require firm leaders capable of making wise decisions, people who can compromise and understand the needs of others, people who can bring others together. Daniel has all these qualities. He's level-headed, compassionate. He's already demonstrated a willingness and ability to find solutions to problems and help others of his kind.
You talk about him like he's some kind of savior.
Not a savior, though you might be sure to learn there are figures like that who exist. For us, for others, even for your kind.
I know he's an amazing person, but you seem awfully fixated on him when I know there are other werewolves around that you don't seem so interested in.
The gap between the old and the young in our clan is quite extreme. Many of the younger Veers are like Daniel. They choose to stay on their own, refuse to join clans, fail to see the value. In fact, our clan has been declining for several years because of this, losing territory to other clans, to hunters, which are a problem the likes of you don't have to worry about. I strongly suspect Danny could help us reverse this decline by drawing in more Veers of the younger generation. And he's in the unique position of being on good terms with your management agency as well, which is something quite rare for our kind, and useful.
So you just want to use him too, for your own gain. Rachel slammed her hands on the table, her eyes flashing.
And his. He could rise to any position in our clan. He belongs with us. He's not one of your kind anymore. He is better. He is one of us.
So it was just some sort of elitism, not wanting him to mingle with other people because they thought he was superior.
You are his friend. If you care for him and want what is truly best for him, you'll convince him to make the right decision regarding our clan.
I think Danny is the only one who knows what the right decision for him is. I can't and won't try to convince him on your behalf.
Are you sure you're not simply reluctant to help us for selfish reasons?
Well, that would definitely make me no different than you. Rachel's eyes narrowed to slits and she stood. I took a step back. It looked like she was dropping all pretense of politeness.
He is one of us!
Did he ask to be?
No, many of us didn't, but it's what we are. Someone like you wouldn't understand.
I was already done with this conversation. I think the one who doesn't understand him is you. Rachel's expression darkened dangerously as she leaned across the table toward me.
If Daniel truly wants to protect the ones he loves, he'll choose us. He'll bring nothing but misfortune if he stays with you.
I think if you would all just leave him alone, there would be a lot less misfortune in his life. And mine, apparently.
I believe that if you continue to cling to him, you'll find that your misfortune will only increase. Greatly.
Are you threatening me?
If that's how you wish to see it.
I got my wizard bros. Get out of here, haters. Suddenly, Corvin and Merle were there, stepping between me and the two werewolves. Thank goodness.
Is everything all right here?
Yes.
No. No, it's not. Merle looked at Rachel, then at Liam. He smiled pleasantly.
I'm sorry, but I'm afraid if you continue to disturb our customers, I'll have to ask you to leave.
We'll leave when we're ready.
If you refuse to cooperate, I will, of course, be required to use force.
Is that a threat, wizard?
Might I remind you that the moment you stepped through that door, you stepped into our domain? If you cause trouble here, I won't be responsible for what happens to you.
What do you think one scrawny healer can do?
I am hardly just a healer.
And he isn't the only wizard at this establishment.
Whoa! Corvin had a backbone. That was surprising. He nodded toward the kitchen where several unfamiliar men were peering out the door. Dang, all the wizard bros. Kaya was also leaning on the counter, arms crossed. I looked between them all, really hoping I wasn't about to see a wizards versus werewolves showdown. I'm kind of hoping I do. Okay, I kind of do want to see that, just not when I'm in the middle of it. Okay, thank you for being honest with yourself, girl. Rachel seemed loath to pick a fight with them, though. She backed down quickly.
Liam, let's go.
The two of them retreated, but Rachel stopped just inside the door.
Remember what we said, Miss Lewis.
They left quickly. I watched them retreat down the sidewalk without as much as a glance back. Merle handed me the coffee he was carrying. I wrapped my shaking hands around the paper cup, grateful for the warmth. Thanks for that.
No need to thank me.
While you're in this shop, you're our customer. Of course we won't let anyone harass you.
Good to know that if I was outside, I'd have been on my own.
That's totally not what I meant. You know that.
I gave him a shaky smile. I definitely hope not. I might not be able to come back if you were the kind to let them beat me up on the street without intervening.
We try to stay neutral, but not that neutral.
I took a deep breath. So, about the painting.
You can give it to Corvin at school, or you can come by and drop it off when you've chosen one.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
It's what we're here for.
Are you going to be okay? If there's anything else...
We can call someone to pick you up if you need.
I think I'll be fine. I drove myself, so it'll be okay. Don't worry about me. I said goodbye and quickly left the shop. Stepping outside was a little nerve-wracking. I kept looking around, expecting to be jumped by 2 angry werewolves at any moment. They were nowhere in sight. I started out of the side alley and toward where I'd left the car.
Not saying hi.
I nearly jumped out of my skin when someone spoke behind me. I whirled around, readying my fake karate moves, when I saw Danny sitting on a bench outside against the side of the murder. Danny! Why are you here? I smiled tentatively, but he didn't return it. He just looked worried as he stood.
I came looking for you. I stopped by your house and your mom said you'd left earlier.
How'd you know I'd be here?
Well, right as I was starting to panic, I got a text from Corvin.
Good guy, Corvin. That big mouth traitor.
I wish you'd asked me before approaching the murder.
I thought you'd try to talk me out of it.
I would have.
But I wanted answers. Actual answers, not bumbling around trying to figure things out with books. A sleek black car crept past us as we spoke. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liam staring out at us. I tried to ignore it. The car sped up and was out of sight in minutes. I really did not like those people. So creepy. And that black car was way too cliché villain. I gave Danny a sidelong look, wondering if he'd noticed the car as well. It didn't seem like it.
So, did you get answers?
Well, I think so. Kind of? About some things. I think I can find the rest out on my own.
I won't ask you to share if you don't want to.
It's not that I don't want to. It's just complicated. He reached out and brushed my hair away from my face, running his hands down to the ends as if he just noticed the length. It's kind of weird. I have no idea how I'm going to keep Mom from noticing. Maybe I should get it cut before I head home.
You should leave it. I think it looks nice this way.
Oh sure, it looks nice, but it's less nice to wake up with all wrapped around my throat trying to strangle me in my sleep.
You could just braid it before bed.
Don't try to convince me with logic. He laughed and tucked my hair behind my ear.
I'm glad to see you're in good spirits.
Did you drive?
I walked.
Want to ride back with me? I can try to explain what I know.
Okay, I'll do that then.
I started to reach for his hand, but he shoved his hands in his coat pockets. Danny! I glanced up at him. He wasn't looking at me, so I couldn't be sure that was intentional instead of coincidental. I couldn't help but feel it was the former. That kind of stung a bit. I put my hands in my own pockets and stared at the sidewalk as we walked. Is he mad at me? I wondered if I should tell him about Rachel and Liam. But I decided against it. Knowing him, he'd just feel guilty, even though it wasn't remotely his fault. We walked silently for a few minutes. It felt awkward and tense, which made me sad. I couldn't remember it feeling like this between us before. Danny suddenly turned toward me, and I spoke before he could say anything. I'm sorry.
What? Why?
Well, I caused trouble for you and Elliot last night. I guess the whole getting lost in the woods and conveniently forgetting everything important about it isn't something I've grown out of yet. I shouldn't have gone with you.
Hey, no. No. That wasn't your fault. That was my fault.
What?
I said I'd stay right beside you. That I'd make sure nothing happened to you, and I couldn't even do that. I shouldn't have left your side, not even for a minute. I was supposed to keep you safe. I told your mom I would. I told Ali and Velos I would. But you disappeared and I couldn't even find you.
You shouldn't blame yourself for that. It was my fault for stepping away from Elliot. And look, nothing happened. I turned up again, and totally safe at that.
But what if you hadn't? We don't even know what happened to you during those hours you were missing.
I shifted uncomfortably, remembering what Rachel had said about an altercation with the strays. But I couldn't tell him that. I didn't remember anything about it, and for all I knew, Rachel was lying.
There was something I wanted to ask you.
Okay?
What were Rachel and Liam doing at the murder?
My eyes went wide and I shuffled awkwardly, not wanting to answer that. How did you know they were there?
I saw them come out a bit before you did. They stopped to talk to me for a few minutes.
No fights this time, I hope.
No, not this time.
I watched him worriedly, wondering what had happened.
Did they try to talk to you again?
Well... Danny sighed again. I think he knew the answer to that without me confirming it.
I think...
He sighed and dragged his hands through his hair. I stopped and looked up at him, but he just turned away.
I think from now on you should spend more time with Ali. She can help you through all this better than I can.
What?
I think I'm just making things worse the more I try to help.
Whoa, wait! That isn't true at all.
Elliot cried. All night. Because I ran off and left the two of you alone and he scared you. That's why you stepped away from him. I just... keep messing up.
I'm sorry, I'm trying so hard not to laugh at the idea of Elliot crying the entire night because he scared me. You goober! Good grief. Oh man, what am I gonna do with Elliot? He's gonna be too much for me. I am not hurt. I wasn't hurt. Why are you acting like this is your fault? This isn't even the first time this has happened to me.
Nora.
If you're just looking for a reason to get me away from you, you don't have to come up with some stupid reasoning for it.
That's not it! That's not it. I just think it's better this way.
Then you're the only one who thinks so. Why did guys always pick the worst time for this kind of thing? Did he really think I wanted to deal with this right now? Huh? Huh, Danny, huh? On top of everything, now this. Oh my god, why was my life so completely stupid? I bit back a bitter laugh and stepped around him, hurrying towards my car.
Nora, wait!
He made a grab for my arm, but I wrenched myself away from him. Nope!
Nora!
I'd only gotten about 10 feet from him when my phone rang. When I checked it, I saw it was my mom. Let me guess, Grandpa's in the hospital. I tried to compose myself before I answered so she wouldn't know I was upset. Ah, Mom's got leaves. Hello?
Nora, it's me.
Mom? What's wrong?
It's Grandpa. He's had a relapse and was taken to the hospital this morning.
What?
He's okay, but they're going to be transferring him to a larger facility. Your father and I will probably need to be out of town for a few days. We need you to come straight home.
Of course! I was just on my way.
Please hurry. We need to leave as soon as possible, but I don't want to leave Spencer alone.
Spencer's a grown-ass man. Leave him alone. I hung up, feeling numb. How did this happen?
Nora?
He was right behind me. I couldn't look at him. My grandfather is in the hospital again. Mom said he's okay for now, but it's pretty serious. It felt like everything had just crumbled in a matter of minutes. I didn't even remember the drive home. I just know Danny offered to drive for me after seeing me battle with the keys just to get the car unlocked. Grandpa had been doing so well. Mom said he was okay, but if they were transferring him to a larger place... By the time we got home, Mom and Dad had their car loaded up. They paused long enough to give me a hug, and they were off, leaving Spencer and I alone until who knows when.